Hey everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Do you ever feel like fear is holding you back? Like there's this invisible wall stopping you from chasing your biggest dreams or just trying something new? I know that feeling all too well. It's that voice in your head that whispers, "What if you fail?" Or, "What if they say no?" For the longest time, that voice was the loudest one in my life. It kept me playing it safe, stuck in a routine that felt comfortable but ultimately unfulfilling. But what if I told you that the very thing you were afraid of holds the secret to unlocking your greatest strength? What if fear isn't a stop sign but a signpost pointing you toward growth? Today, I want to share a personal story with you, a story about how I stopped running from my fears and started running toward them, and how that changed everything. This is the story of how I found courage where I least expected it and became stronger than I ever thought possible. My name is Alex, and for a huge part of my life I was a professional fear avoider. My top 3 fears? Failure, rejection, and the great scary unknown. They were like my shadow, following me everywhere. Because of them, I turned down exciting job opportunities. I shied away from meeting new people. I said no to adventures that my heart secretly craved. My comfort zone became my cage, a place where dreams went to die. I'd look at people who seemed fearless, who were out there living bold, vibrant lives, and I'd wonder, what's their secret? How do they do it? I felt trapped, watching my own life from the sidelines, and honestly, I was getting tired of being a spectator. Something had to change. The turning point wasn't some dramatic movie-like moment. It was a quiet realization, a thought that dawned on me one ordinary afternoon. These fears aren't just going to pack up and leave. They're a part of the human experience. They're part of my experience, and right then, I saw I had a choice. I could continue to let them be the boss, dictating every move I made, or I could decide to face them. I could choose courage. It wasn't about becoming fearless. That felt impossible. It was about choosing to act despite the fear. And that one simple decision, to choose courage, was the first real step toward taking back control of my life. It was terrifying, but for the first time in a long time, it also felt incredibly empowering. So, how do you even start to face something that feels so overwhelming? My first step was surprisingly simple. I got a pen and a piece of paper. I wrote down every single fear I could think of, big or small. Fear of public speaking. Fear of being judged. Fear of starting a new hobby and being bad at it. Just seeing them written down, out of my head and on paper, made them seem less like giant monsters and more like manageable problems. It was a way of saying, I see you. I acknowledge you're here. This simple act of naming my fears was crucial. It demystified them. It was the first time I felt like I had some power over them, instead of the other way around. Once my fears were out in the open, I knew I couldn't tackle them all at once. That would be like trying to climb Mount Everest in a single day. So I decided to start small, ridiculously small. My goal was to build momentum with tiny, achievable victories. For example, my fear of public speaking was huge. So, instead of signing up to give a TED Talk, my first goal was to simply ask one question in a large team meeting at work. My heart was pounding, my palms were sweaty, but I did it. And you know what? Nothing bad happened. The world didn't end. The following week, my goal was to share one idea. That was a little harder, but I did that too. With each tiny step, each small act of bravery, I could feel a shift inside me. It was like a muscle I'd never used before was slowly getting stronger. These small wins started to build a foundation of confidence, brick by brick. Of course, it wasn't a smooth, straight line to the top. There were plenty of moments of doubt. There were days when the fear felt just as strong as ever, when that old voice came back whispering, "See, you can't do this. Just go back to where it's safe." I remember trying a new creative writing class convinced I would be the worst one there. I shared a short piece I'd written and the feedback wasn't all positive. My initial reaction was to shrink, to think, I knew it, I'm not good enough. I almost quit right then and there. But then I remembered my goal. It wasn't to be the best writer overnight. It was to face my fear of being judged. I forced myself to go back the next week. I reminded myself that setbacks are not failures. They are part of the process. I learned to talk back to that negative voice saying, "Thanks for your opinion, but I'm doing this anyway." Refusing to give up, even when it was hard, was the real victory. A massive shift happened when I started to change my relationship with fear. I began to see it not as a warning to stop, but as a signal that I was on the right track. That feeling of discomfort, the racing heart, the nervous energy, it meant I was stepping out of my comfort zone. It meant I was growing. Fear became my compass, pointing toward the exact areas where I had the most potential to expand as a person. When I felt fear about applying for a promotion, I started to think, here it is. This is a growth opportunity. This reframe was a game changer. Fear transformed from an enemy to an ally, a guide showing me the path to becoming a more capable and resilient version of myself. It was no longer about eliminating fear, but about welcoming it as an essential part of the journey. As I continued this practice, something amazing started to happen. The small steps led to bigger leaps. I not only spoke up in meetings, but I eventually volunteered to lead a major project. The fear was still there, but now my confidence was there too, standing right beside it. I started that hobby I was so scared of being bad at and found a community of people who were supportive and encouraging. I even booked a solo trip, facing my fear of the unknown head-on. With every challenge I embraced, I discovered a strength I never knew I had. I became more adaptable, more open to new experiences, and more resilient in the face of setbacks. Life started to feel more vibrant, more exciting. I was no longer just a spectator. I was the main character in my own adventure story. Today, I can honestly say I am a completely different person. Am I fearless? Absolutely not. Fear still shows up. But now, when it does, I know how to handle it. I see it as an old friend stopping by to let me know that something important is on the horizon. I am more confident, more willing to take calculated risks, and more in love with the process of learning and growing. I'm grateful for every single fear I faced, because each one has carved out a little more space for courage inside of me. My story isn't about some superhuman feat. It's about the power of taking that first small, scary step. It's about realizing that you do not have to wait for the fear to go away to start living. So, I want to ask you, what is it that you're afraid of? What dream is sitting on a shelf, collecting dust, because fear is telling you not to reach for it? I want you to remember that your fears are not walls. They are hurdles, and you are so much stronger than you think. The courage you're looking for is not something you find. It's something you build, one small, brave choice at a time. The journey begins with that single step. Are you ready to take it? Are you ready to face your fears and see just how strong you can become? I believe you are. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. I hope it has inspired you in some small way. If it did, please consider subscribing to English Tailies for more motivational stories about overcoming challenges and finding your inner strength. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who might need to hear this message, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next video. Until next time, be brave.